gavel, and you accepted the gavel, Mr. Scooter?
Yes.
Okay, it's all you.
And all those will be on your iPad. Oh, it's on the. We'll find it out. I can't. This would be how you do it. They're all kind of preloaded, so.
Okay. Call to order. Let's have a roll call. Bruce Bustamante. Debbie Wrinkley. S.J. Klein. Matt Cruikshank.
Present.
Steve Horn.
Present.
Jonathan Lang.
Present.
Diana Evans.
Present.
Mike Fenster.
Here.
Bob French. Jim Winchester.
Here.
And I'm here.
And Bob French is online.
Okay. So we have a quorum. Okay. We need to approve the agenda.
Move to approve.
Sure, I'll move. Mike Fenster.
Okay.
Or second.
Did you get that second?
Diana Evans seconds.
Action items. The 2023, 2026 tip criteria update.
Point of order.
Oh,
Christine, there is a message displaying on the top of the screen that says guests are waiting to join. View lobby. Do you see that message?
I do not. We've let several people in already.
So am I an admin? Are you an admin of this meeting?
Yes.
Others
Yeah, Aaron
invited?
have seen,
How'd you get to the criteria?
Aaron have seen, and there are several guests in the meeting already.
Just take
Okay.
a walk and then wait for.
As long as we know, yeah. Oh,
What's
nope,
this?
now it's gone. You must have let them in because that message just disappeared.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe it was a delay.
Okay. Does everybody have the tip criteria update open?
so point of order, if I'm saying this correctly, do we need to approve the meeting minutes prior to the action item?
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yep. Yeah, we need to approve the meeting minutes. Thank you.
Welcome.
touch the blue on your screen, it will come up.
It touches the blue when it comes up.
If you just swipe,
Yeah.
if you swipe right.
Oh, and then it comes up.
Yeah, you
too.
can just swipe right as well. You don't.
I read through them already, so. Yeah.
Matt Cruikshank, I moved to approve the minutes.
Steve Horn, I second that.
Okay. Now moving on to number 5, action items. 2023 to 2026 tip criteria update.
Did we just call a vote? Did I just miss that? We had a first and second, but did we vote on the approval of minutes?
You did.
No, we did not.
We're learning.
Okay. People approving the minutes as written?
Aye.
Aye. We can just say any objections to is an easy way.
Any objections? Hearing none, so passed. Third time. Good job.
We're learning.
Action item, 2023, 2026. Tip criteria update.
All right, I'll go through this. I'll start and we'll mull it over and see what you guys think. So the TIP, or Transportation Improvement Program, is the program of projects that AMATS uses to show what the kind of surface transportation improvement projects in the next 4 years will be, or every 4 years. It's a 4-year program. And we, of course, have criteria that we use to rank and score the projects that are going to be funded in the TIP. And every 4 years, we create a new TIP, but also every 4 years, we look at the criteria and see if we need to tweak them a little bit. And usually our goals with the criteria are just trying to make them more objective every time we get through them. So many years ago, one of the criteria was improves quality of life. And that sounds like a great criteria, but one person's improved quality of life may be the fact that they're a single occupancy vehicle driver, and if they never had anyone else in their way, they'd be very happy. So improves quality of life is kind of nebulous. We kind of dialed that in a little bit to say this improvement is within a quarter mile of a park or things of that nature. So trying to get it a little better. So this time around, we worked with Mr. Weddleton, who is one of the policy committee members and also in the assembly, and he really wanted to make sure that we were connecting the land use side of the house, land use planning, with the transportation planning side of the house, which is obviously something that the Federal Highway Administration is very interested in, that connection between land use and transportation planning. And so that's what we tried to reflect with this update to the criteria. They've gone through a couple of iterations. They've gone through staff kicking them back and forth, and gone through a work session with the technical and policy committee. And just at the last policy committee meeting, they removed the criteria for a 2-month public review. So since you're the community advisory committee, this is one of the steps along the way, is getting your thoughts on it. We can go through these criteria line by line if you like. You folks can offer individual comments. You can offer it as a group. Again, we have 2 months to look at these. If you wanted to get a deeper dive into it and do a work session, we could do that, whatever you folks want to do, or just a separate meeting just on these after you had some time to look at it.
I'm wondering if the community councils have individually had a chance to look through these and give their feedback. A lot of them are not meeting right now, so it might be impossible to do, but.
Yeah, so normally we do a 30-day public commentary, but the policy committee said we'd like these to go out for 60-day to make sure the community councils have a chance, because they just got released, Friday.
Oh, right.
So 2 months then.
Yeah, 2 months.
Okay.
So I'd be stunned to think I had a chance to look at it. We just released them.
Yeah.
We released them for 2 months. The policy committee did that to make sure, at least to give the community councils a chance. If they needed to have a special meeting, or they had to just schedule it on there, everyone do it. So.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment.
Sure.
I think the MOA traffic and safety engineer, if he makes a recommendation, it should be more than 1 point. Case, I can make a case in point for, it's outside of our responsibility, but it's relevant. It's probably several places throughout the city. Is down in Girdwood, they wanted to put a flashing light there. There was no data to support that, no crash data, but literally every weekend I am there, which is a vast percentage of the weekends, I see near misses, and which never accounted for. But yet the safety engineer, I'm trying to recall his name, was unable to he had difficulty justifying that, the flashing signs down there.
Scott Thomas.
Scott Thomas, thanks for the help. And the GBOS fought very hard to get that. And, you know, of a trained engineer such as Scott believes that a safety repair needs to be made. I think he should be given more weight than 1 point.
So I'll explain the rationale behind why we did it this way and see what you think. So again, we're trying to objectify this stuff as much as possible. And I have great respect for Scott Thomas. He is very good at what he does. And I'm certainly not going to go against it when he suggests improvement. But the way this is written is to say, if we have an intersection or a corridor that already shows it has an above average crash rate. So it's a location where let's just say it's Lake Otis and Tudor, and it has an above average crash rate for that intersection related to right turn, right hooks, hitting pedestrians, et cetera, et cetera. So that's going to show up in the data, right? The city and the state collect. And that will already get those 3 points there because it has the above average crash rate. And so the idea is if there's a location that doesn't have an above average crash rate or even just an average crash rate, but either Scott Thomas or the traffic engineer for the municipality says, I know it doesn't have a thing, but the way it's designed, I can just tell as a professional, I can look at that and see that there's an issue with the way it's designed. Even though we haven't had any issues yet, we probably just got lucky. That's kind of the idea is we expect that places that are a challenge, it's already going to reflect in the crash rate that shows up there. And we know that the countermeasure that they're suggesting will take care of that. That's going to get most of those places that are already problematic. The idea, again, is that some place that doesn't have a rate, but you can look at it as a professional and say, that's what we're trying to capture there. So we're not trying to discount Scott Thomas's professional expertise or, the traffic engineers upstairs for the municipal facilities. It's just designed to kind of hit that idea of something that got left out. It wasn't having an issue already, but they can look at it and go, I can just tell it's probably problematic.
The swoops are another thing that going down Alaska Highway. Bad idea.
Well, one location that's just right next to us is at MLK, where when they built the road, I know why they did it. I've heard why they did it, but you go there in the winter and you can see people just slide up.
Is it an elevation on that?
Right. So it's something, Steve could probably have looked at it and other people could have looked at it.
That's why
That's going to be a problem. And right after it was built. And of course, now there's above average crash rate there. I don't know if there's any fatalities or anything, but you go there in the winter, you come around that corner very slow because we can see the marks in the ditch.
Yeah. Do we wait for somebody to be hurt or injured seriously before we take action?
Right.
Or do we take action?
Right.
And,
And that's why we have this to give some points to it for something that maybe it hasn't happened yet, but it will. And keeping in mind, this is one criteria out of pages and pages of criteria. So it will get points here, even if it doesn't have a crash rate already, but it could get points in another area, in another criteria.
If I may, to understand that the maximum points available is 5. So if the project engineer can give a point, then he's got at max 20% say so on the points for that. Am I understanding that correctly? Or that would be in addition to the 5?
Somebody's looking again, I think.
We allowed to open the door?
Yeah. Aaron, he's talking about.
So, yeah, they would only get 1 point max.
So if there were already 5, would there be 6 with the project engineer or still
No,
maximum
because it's
5?
an or.
Yeah,
So
or,
when you
yeah.
look at this one up here that we have here, improved trucks
Right.
safety. So you either take points from the top portion
Uh-huh.
or you go to the portion where it says the traffic engineer and
Okay,
give it 1 point. You don't add anything on top of that because it's recognizing that areas with data should have the highest amount of score because it's a realized area that needs to be worked on. And then if there's an area with no data, we want to acknowledge the fact that there are some locations that are a concern, even if there is no data, so that it can get some points. They can still get a bonus point. So if you see there the plus bonus point on there, even if the engineer says there's a problem, they get 1 point from there. If it's on a designated freight corridor for this particular one, they can still get that bonus point. So the max they could get is 2.
What I'm thinking is, before we get into individual things, if we understand this methodology of grading before we get into,
Yeah, that
it
makes
might
sense.
be helpful.
Yeah.
Because this is the first time I'm seeing this. Am I alone in that?
This will be the first time almost everyone has seen it.
Yeah,
So I'd rather-
the
I would rather
criteria,
know how this thing works before we start talking about individual highways.
yeah, the criteria has been the same for a long, long time. This was a big departure from I'd ever seen the criteria before, so.
So that was the question I had too, is how can we tell the differences from the old criteria? I mean, it's completely different then, right? I mean, because that was one of my first thoughts was, okay, what the old one, now this is the new, and then what are the differences?
Well, yeah, one of the big differences is that previously we had roadway criteria, non-motorized criteria, and the air quality criteria in a separate one. So this one combines the roadway and the non-motorized in the same one. They're using the same criteria, but would rank projects. As you can see, there's big streets and the pedestrian category over there. So that's one big difference. Yeah.
I just can't, maybe if we take out the or, the traffic, I mean, I'm not sure if it's two separate people. The traffic and safety engineer both agree that this is a bad thing. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
That it's a bad idea. I
guess my thought is the thing to keep in mind is that if it's an area that's a problem, it will have crash data already. It's already showing up in all the numbers that we're keeping track of, that the city and the state are keeping track of. This is trying to capture, it doesn't have any issues right now, and there's not a single crash on there at all. But the professionals can look at it and say, well, it's just something waiting to happen. I think you're gonna, if it's already poorly designed and it's having some issues, it's already gonna happen.
But like, how many people go off at MLK and it's not even reported? I mean, using that scenario, and
well, the municipality, I know the municipality does this. I don't know about the state traffic data collection, but the municipality collects every single crash report from APD. So every single car that went off there that APD reported to, that's tracked.
Yeah, I guess I've made my point.
I'm just assuming the state probably tracks the same, and they get stuff from the troopers every single.
You mean Dowling, Lake Otis? When I lived there, I watched near misses pretty much on a daily up with the bicycles during the summer.
So I'm going to make 2 comments, and the first comments on that is, I agree with everything you're saying, Craig, but I think there's 2 different models there. There's a reactive model and there's a preventative model. And with the reactive model, it makes complete that you have the data that we have the crashes and we're going to respond based on that. But also, I think there should be consideration for the preventative model where we have a safety engineer and they are trained to recognize issues before they become a problem. So I think there should be some extra weight given right there is maybe there isn't the data to back this right there because it hasn't occurred yet. But why would we want to risk people's lives right there when we have we don't want to give too much merit, but I do think there should be some extra consideration when we do have a safety engineer that says, hey, this is a problem right here. You're going to have people getting hurt right there. I would hope that would have a high effect on the scoring right there as my first comment. And the next comment I have is a question. So to my understanding, Representative Weddleton or policy member Weddleton had a lot of input that he wanted to move towards the having comprehensive plans take a much bigger impact into scoring. So it's not a particular criteria, but rather this entire scoring process is heavy weighted with comprehensive plans?
Well, you'll see it later on when we get to some of the criteria where it has that connection. to
Gotcha. There's
plans.
individual items that are relating to it. Okay. And I think that, I do like that model. I think on the community council level right there, that is our golden grail is our comprehensive plans. So yeah, I think there's a lot of merit to that.
I mean, I will point out, we are a makeup of state and local, so we don't just adhere to comprehensive plan.
100%, I get you.
So we cannot sit there and solely focus on a single couple of plans. We have a lot of stuff we have to cover. So we tried our best at, so like land use plan was a big one that we integrated into here. And if there are other plans that you see missing, we did include the Vision Zero plan in here. Those are probably the two biggest ones, because those are the ones that affect the greatest amount. Otherwise, we're going to be looking at each individual area's plan and trying to figure out how best to provide a score that can impact that one thing. It would be impossible for us to be able to do. So I just want people to keep in mind that we did what we could, but we're not limited to just the comprehensive plans.
You know, to respond back to your comment about reactive versus proactive, and I get that. I'll just say, and you'd have a better knowledge of this having worked over there for so long, but my experience in doing this 18 years is I can't even think of one time that a traffic engineer said, wow, that was designed poorly. That's going to be a problem and we better deal with that. Now, it may happen. I just haven't heard it. And we've never had points before that gave any thought to trying to rely on the expertise of someone, even though there wasn't documented crash data there. This is the first time we went, hey, you know, maybe we want to have something that can take that into account. Because always before it has been, well, once they did the highway safety improvement program, what's the crash index? What does it show here? It just spits out the exact number and we just go off of that. This is the first time we've said, why don't we try to throw something that way to take into account those rare but possible times when
Tangible number.
someone can actually look at that and say, geez, that might not be the best design.
I mean, I saw it firsthand. I sat there and watched it at the GBOS meeting. Both with the flashing lights to get installed and with the swoops going out next to the Alaska Highway, where Scott actually did, he said, I agree with you 100%, but the numbers aren't there.
Yeah.
And the numbers prevented him from doing it.
Yeah, you know, and I just want to interject real quick. It's been 15 years since I retired from DOT, so I don't know exactly how things are going there nowadays. But I do recall what we're saying here is, you know, you want to do something, the numbers don't support it, and then it comes into a money thing always. So, but I guess if you could change the criteria somehow, maybe that would up some of these projects to a higher level. But I'm not sure how you do that because, you know, there's only so much money out there and there's issues all over I mean, I know I drive to that intersection quite a bit out there at Alyeska, so I know what you're talking about. And some of the other locations we've talked about too, but the money goes where the data supports.
And I do know the state is actually working on it. We just had a presentation a short while ago. They're working on a project on the intersection. They just started the design of it. So
it's a big project.
Big project, yeah. Outside of our boundaries, but a big project.
I met at it.
Mike, did you have your?
Well, I was wondering, looking at numbers then, I'm just looking at the first row here. It says on the bicycle pedestrian side, it says project area contains 3 or more non-motorized crashes in 5 years. What is a non-motorized crash under the bicycle pedestrian? Is that bikes crashed and no motorized vehicles were involved? Does that involve bicycle and motorized vehicles together? I mean, I got hit by a car last year myself on my bicycle, so I know this quite well. Was I not considered because I was hit by a car, or?
That's what it's considered.
I believe it just means
So if it
a
says
non-motorized vehicle or non-motorized person was involved.
So if I were to crash because I tried to stop, but no car hit me and I got injured, is that still a non-motorized vehicle crash that
I'd have to
is
talk to the.
a number or not?
Yeah, I don't know how they.
So
track it.
when we're looking at these numbers, what I'm trying to understand is how are the numbers being assessed, which is what he's saying, that the numbers weren't there. Are the numbers truly being assessed for traffic or only motorized traffic? And I think it's something we all need to understand to say, if the numbers are there, if the numbers are not, then what do we need to do to make sure that they are including numbers we expect are being included? Does that kind of make sense?
It makes sense. I don't have any insight unless you know, Aaron. As far as I know, if a non-motorized, either a pedestrian or a bicyclist are involved, that's counted in there. But
If you hit a grading and your toes are up your bicycle, but there's no motorized vehicle, then that's not considered.
my guess is if an APD is called or an ambulance is called for you,
Right.
whether you hit a vehicle or not, that's counted.
Yeah.
Because that's what the data group counts, and that's what they get their report from APD or the troopers.
Only if the ambulance is called, not if you.
No, I think if APD is called,
If APD is called.
yeah,
If it's reported,
if it's reported, yeah.
because it's hard for us to know unreported,
Yeah, we
because
can't-
then there's no data for it. So we
Yeah,
wouldn't
that's what
be
I'm
able to-
saying. How is the data?
It's all
Is it
reported
all
crashes.
been reported to APD or AST?
And it's a little different for the non-motorized and vehicular. In the case, my understanding is the Muni lists vehicular non-motorized as a vehicular crash.
Uh-huh.
So they fault the driver of the car, not the non-motorized individual. So then we have to drill down into the data a little more, which has become a problem for us when we're doing our performance measures and targets for safety. Vision Zero didn't really do a very good job at drilling into the data accurately enough to say, here's the problem in this area. It's just, there's a problem along this stretch of the corridor.
So in my case, it was hit and run. So there's no,
Did you report it?
oh yeah, I'm gonna
Okay.
get carried to the hospital in the middle of COVID.
I think it would be designated as a hit and run.
Mhm.
And we would see that, but then when it came time to actually effectiveness of countermeasures on how to handle that, we would have to look up what are some of the effective countermeasures to help with hit and runs? Is it an illumination issue? Is it a turning rate, right turn on red issue, that kind of stuff? So that's why in the criteria we put in there, the effectiveness of the countermeasures and the locations of where you can find that information. Because that is all based on federal and state, and I think the Muni has some countermeasures of here's a reoccurring issue that has happened, and here's an effective way to handle it. And they actually rate whether it's high, medium, or low, or they give it stars based on it. And we can use that as a way, because what we were trying to get at here is, in your case, there's like, you were hit, and we just come through with a roadway project. Well, does that actually address the issue that's in that area there? And we were having a hard time being able to answer that. So the idea here is to try and get us to focus on that more and say, okay, here's a bunch of crashes in this area. What are the cause, or what are the reported causes of those? And how can we best address it with the project? And that's part of what projects that are nominated have to do, is they have to be able to justify and support, we're helping to address this safety issue here with these countermeasures, or here's where we think it's going to go, here's where we think it's going to happen. And then when we score and rank it, we have to assess, okay, is this an effective countermeasure, yes or no, or is it kind of not, is it missing the point of the project?
Okay, thank you.
The circle at Dowling and Seward Highway, was that based on data? Or the
Roundabout?
roundabout?
Yeah, they don't put roundabouts in for fun. They have to be based on data. So everything would have to be based on data, so traffic volumes, because they have certain thresholds that they have to meet in order to be able to effectively have like a four-way stop or traffic light or roundabouts or stuff like that. I know the Seward Highway and Dowling one has had issues because it's too small.
Yeah.
And so they have a project coming in to expand those.
But how was that decision brought? How was it?
Data.
There was crashes.
I don't know if it's crashes or,
I probably both crashes and capacity.
yeah.
I mean, you're right. Can I just tell a quick, short story? The day those roundabouts opened, we had our project engineer out there, and I just was promoted to the director of design and construction, and the regional director was out, and so they're going to open these things. And, we knew it was going to be in the news. It was in the news. And sure enough, Channel 2 News interviewing our guy, Mike Galt, was the project engineer. And he goes, oops, that didn't sound good. And there was a crash right then, so, but I mean, to go back on that, it's a lot of things are looked at and before a roundabout is put in: capacity, savings, to the, with respect to putting in a signal, but yeah, the crash data had to be, I mean, I wasn't involved in this latest one, but
Yeah.
had to be looked at.
And
Mr. Franchise's hand raised.
Go ahead.
go ahead, Bob.
Bob, can you hear us? Go ahead.
We can't hear
He's got
you.
his mic turned off.
Yeah. You may be talking, but we can't hear you.
We can see them.
Haven't heard him yet
It
today.
said- The microphone says it's on, but we still can't hear you.
Bob, would you mind typing your question in the chat?
He said his mic seems to be messed up.
While we're waiting for him to type, this presentation is, Craig or Aaron, are you guys going through this presentation? And what's your format of this presentation? Because there's a lot of items right here, and I know if we spend this much time on every item, we'd be here for a substantially long time. What's your plan for going over this? Is this just giving us this information right now, and then we set up a workstation? What do you?
Well, I did ask at the start, you may have been in transition between that, so I didn't hear. I said,
It's a 2-month public comment period. And so there's enough time to, if you folks want a separate meeting just on this or a work session just on this. If you want to do individual comments, group comments, happy to help, happy to do whatever you want to do. So, I mean, a work session is fine where we just hang out and go through them.
So this seems like a very in-depth document that has major impacts on our scoring process. I think this would be something that we really should pick up and spend time and attention into. I think the question of how do we, so I got to remember this last time we went through this. We had a period of time that people that were going to, 3 days before our work session, we had comments that were previously submitted. So we had individual comments, and then we could also have items that could be taken up as a resolution. Is that correct, Aaron? Did we have 2 different formats, individual or group?
Yeah, last time we did anything like this, we sent it out to the committee and said a week before and said, look it over and then come to the work session with any comments or email any comments beforehand to staff and they can compile them and bring them together. When it comes time to submitting any comments to the TAC or the policy committee, our general practice is you will submit it as a group. If you want to send it individually, you will need to do so as yourself, not as a member of the CAC.
Yeah. Okay, that's actually, it reminds me how we did it. So we had these items and we went each one and basically said a yay or nay based off of the group. And then at the end, we made one all-encompassing resolution of the items that passed. Would the body be comfortable with doing a similar format with that?
I think that'd be a good idea.
Yeah, I think that worked
And
good last time.
yeah, I thought it worked really good.
So,
go ahead.
since it's a 60-day public comment period, can we have a special meeting before that? Or I don't
Yes.
know what
We call work session.
Yeah.
We would call if we do, as long as we have our 1 week notice, we can do action items, correct?
at a meeting, yes,
Okay.
not at a work session.
So we would need to call we should probably just call another meeting because then we can do action items instead of having to, our time's all valuable. We would like to have, I really liked Aaron's point last time that it's nice to have good responses from, I don't want to call you the administration, from the organization. It's nice to have good comments. And if we have shotgun comments right at the end right there, I don't think it really allows for decent responses. So I would like, and I'm open to different timeframes, but I would like to give a period of time for response for the items that we would like to take up. That seem reasonable?
Mhm.
What do you think a reasonable timeframe would be?
So Matt, so the comments come in initially, correct? And then we all need to have time to look at those comments and decide on whether we agree or disagree, and then we have a meeting to.
So let's say
Let's go through that again.
okay, so let's say each one of us had a comment, maybe one person had 5 comments. So each person would present their comments and we would say a yes or no
Right.
by the body of each of their items right there. Okay, so we've recorded that. Next person, their items. And instead of doing a formal motion though for every single item, at the very end, we would make one single motion to approve all things that passed by simple majority. Just to do one resolution.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Do you think that's?
No, that sounds good. So we're back to your question then, how much time do we need?
And would it be helpful, like for the comments, when you're talking about taking comments in, to have somebody like Christine or somebody compile them?
Oh, they will.
before,
They,
You know, so it's.
I guess we're asking the wrong, how much time would you guys like for a reasonable response time?
Well, we, at the end of the 2 months, we're expecting that we'll have comments from around the community. So we'll have a decent number of comments that then as staff, we need to go through and, say, yes, we agree with this, or no, we don't agree with this. And then it goes to the technical committee. So,
The sooner we can get them, the better. So, I mean, if we had a meeting in a month's time,
How much time before that meeting would you like the comments?
So let me plan on a couple of things. One, we got a comment from Nancy Pease asking, are you guys going to look at the community councils and the general public before your work session? Because that brings up a whole host of problems because we won't get comments from everyone until the end of the 60-day comment period.
yeah, typically.
So FCC just had our annual picnic. I think it's with the time that we have, I don't think we were elected to represent our areas. I think it's important that the community councils had comments that they send in their comments, but I think the coordination with all the community councils becomes logistically problematic. So I think we move forward with what works for this body. I would rather us have action than be paralyzed by waiting for all these other organizations. That's my thought.
Okay, then that brings up a couple of things I'll mention. So my recommendation is you guys do a work session first, as soon as you can, because it sounds like you're going to need to go through and understand how the scoring works. In our handbook, we have a criteria handbook that kind of laid out some information in here, including how much are max points possible, how much are broken down per category, per criteria, that kind of stuff. So it'd be nice to go through all of that and kind of explain the rationale and tell you, I don't really want to get into too much comparison of old criteria versus new criteria because that would take 10 times as long as going through the new criteria. But we can go through some basic things about what changed with the scoring and what some of the rationale behind that.
There was a previous scoring index.
Yeah, and so we can explain that difference.
Yeah, we have not had a presentation on this today. I mean, we walked right into it. And then I'm maybe basing more on emotional issues that if there was a presentation more, that would.
Okay, I would love to do that because then it would give us a chance to kind of explain why we selected and laid out the criteria as we did. Because the TAC and the policy committee had a couple of work sessions with it, so they were able to see it and understand it a little bit.
When you say a work session, or you're referring to like a presentation?
It would be both. So it'd be like a presentation by staff at the beginning. So we would go through all the criteria and explain everything. And then it would be a chance for this group to sit and have discussions over things if you have questions. So that brings up my next point. If you guys have things you want to talk about at the work session, so then this determines how long do you want to wait between now and the work session? Do you want to wait for you guys to review it and provide comments? Or do you want to do the work session right away and then take some time from there until your next meeting to formulate your comments? Get them sent into staff, get a response from staff, and then discuss it all at your next meeting.
I would say work session right away.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we've said we are going to do actions, then we haven't necessarily followed through with it. And if we at least go through a work session, it kind of forces our hand to go through the entire process.
Then I would recommend a work session right away. As soon as you guys can logistically do it, and we can easily do a quick presentation to talk about the criteria and everything like that. And then we can answer questions if you have any at the meeting there, and then we can set up a follow-up meeting and set a deadline of when we need comments from you guys probably give it, maybe a week or so. We'll need some kind of response depending upon how many comments you submit us. If you submit one comment, we won't need as long, but if you submit 100, we may need a week to do it. So if we can just factor in about a week or so to respond to any comments you send to us after the work session, then your follow-up meeting. And then if you guys decide to take action at that follow-up meeting, that should be done within the 60 days pretty easily. And we can give like, say we have the work session next week or the week after, then you can give like 3 or 4 weeks to do review and provide your comments and then send it back to us.
And how can we, I know how to hear Matt saying, but if a person from a community has a point that, how can we ensure that we've seen that? For instance, a comment comes in after we meet or at the end of the 59th day, and we don't even see it.
Because we won't be bringing the community council or public comments, general public comments to you. As Matt said, it's logistic. It would be so basically in order to do what was asked, we would have to wait until the end of the 60-day comment period. And then we would have to get together with you guys afterwards. So it'd extend our time another month. And by the time the 60-day comment period is, we're about at the point where we need to get started on nominating projects. Because we have to get this tip done by a year from now, about.
We'll compile all the comments.
Yeah, so we have to compile all the comments, so that can take a month or more, depending on.
Would it be feasible, like our next regular meeting would be October 27th? 60-day comment period would be 2 months. Like you get all the comments and have them maybe mostly compiled. Maybe you could give us a presentation at our next meeting. I mean, would that whack out your schedule that much? It kind of seems like that's probably about when you will get done with looking through the comments too.
I mean, do you guys want to go through all the comments we received from the community council in public?
Well, I mean, if there's things that jump out, maybe not every single comment, but if there's some, general trends of concern that many people have mentioned.
This comment period ends September 20th. What Christina had posted, so.
So we'd have to, so it'd be we're probably gonna miss October deadline to get anything on TAC or policy committee, depends on how many comments.
That's how many comments.
I mean, we could race it and try and get it in October, because if it pushes out to November or December, we're in a little bit of trouble.
Yes, I think we can hear Bob French now if he wanted to speak.
Bob, can you hear us?
I can hear you. So I just typed in a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So great. I wanted to ask, what is the time frame for the scoring criteria to be approved?
So the end of the public comment period is September 20th. And depending on how many comments, we would get it approved at that would be the October policy committee meeting, the 4th Thursday in October. I don't have a calendar hanging on the wall right now, but so that would be the time frame if there weren't a lot of comments.
So previously, Craig, I'm not sure if you used SurveyMonkey or it was Aaron. That was a very useful tool to coordinate everyone's schedule. I think we have support for setting up a work session and a meeting. How does everyone feel about that, just so we can get this knocked off the table? Is there anybody that objects to this plan? So can we do a survey? Are you familiar? I don't know who would do it, but
Doable.
okay, perfect. Give us some options.
Yeah.
So we can, so it's settled. We'll get a SurveyMonkey for our work session and our next meeting. And based off of that SurveyMonkey, I'm completely on board with whatever the body says.
And what time frame are we looking for the doodle poll?
For the work session, it would be nice to get ASAP, and I'm guessing we need at least, so I guess the work session, we're not taking any action, so we don't have any, so I'm thinking, is next week crazy for everyone?
maybe Wednesday or Thursday.
Yeah, a little later in the
Got
week.
visitors right now.
Yeah.
And then hunting season.
Yeah.
I would vote for Thursday because I'm going to be down on the peninsula until Wednesday. But I'm just one of them.
Yeah, Thursday would be good.
So that'd be the 5th of August.
I think I can do that.
Let me before I start talking.
This is Jonathan Lang. If I have a preference, I'd like to do 2 weeks from now. Next week is crazy for me.
So 2 weeks from now will be the TAC meeting on that Thursday, the 12th.
Unless we had it early in the morning.
Yeah,
But even if we have the TAC, I mean, correct, I guess, are you guys just saying you're very busy? Because we'd still have, okay. So to have responses back to our comments, doing it that week would be difficult. We'd have to have a farther period of time between our next meeting.
yeah, well, so this would be just, so the first thing we got to figure out is when you guys want to do the work session. And maybe sounds like 2 weeks from now would be best. Or a week from now, what is your kind of timeframe on that?
So are there any other individuals that have hard times? I heard next week would be preferable. I heard Thursday this week and out. Are there any other timeframes we should be in consideration of?
If it's next week, I am gone till Friday. I could do a Friday, which would be the day after. Yay, face.
I can't do Friday.
So are you talking about this Thursday doing a work session?
Well, I wanted to hear if there was any, I know we're not gonna be able to make everyone's schedule. I already understand that.
Yeah.
I was more just trying to see if there was multiple people with certain timeframes.
This Thursday doesn't work for me either.
Okay, so let's kick it to next week, midweek and out, some options.
Yeah.
So Diane was saying she can't be here
Well,
until Friday, right?
well, Thursday without the TAC.
That's just making sure that we get it done before 2:30, because we'll be busy at 2:30 for the TAC meeting.
Thursday morning.
Yeah, so if we do Thursday morning,
Just saying 12th
we
or
can
the
do that.
5th.
The 12th,
Well,
The
and I will
12th.
not bring donuts.
man,
M&M.
I knew
I
you
can't-
were coming every.
I can't eat them, so I'm not going to bring them.
12th sounds good to me.
For me.
So you're talking what time of the day then?
9 o'clock.
Later, the better for me, I'd prefer,
It
but
has to
I
be
think
done- Has to be done by 2:30.
it has to be done by 2:30.
Before that, that's our timer.
Yeah, before, yeah,
We'll be setting up at 1:30, so.
we need to be done by 1.
9 or 10
We need to be
o'clock.
done, yeah, we are gonna be doing the morning. Yeah, that'll be fun.
So what are you saying?
9 or
10?
10.
10 o'clock?
10.
Yeah,
Why are you laughing?
Yeah, that's why we're missing. So we're talking on the 5th?
12 is what I'm talking.
Okay, yeah.
Because you're talking next week.
Yeah, that's.
We were originally talking next week,
But that's not gonna work, so.
any conflicts, we bumped it to the next week out past that,
12th.
and we're hearing 12th is we need to be done.
12th at 10 in the morning. Anybody not able to make that?
We're doing the
No, it
digital
works.
live.
10 o'clock.
Works like
Okay.
in 2 hours.
Christine, do you mind sending out one of those wonderful reminders or the events right there?
So thanks.
It'll be just me, thank you. Yeah, 2 hours, and then we could go from there.
There's a couple more comments. Bob, did you want to we didn't get to discuss your comment about bike and ped. Did you want to still bring that up? We sort of went back from that, but or it could be what you wrote in the chat.
I think it's probably one of the comments that will appear, is
Okay.
my guess, because I don't think that there's really an answer to that.
Okay, and then we had one more follow-up from Nancy P. She says, AMAT's done trial runs with some of the projects to see if they truly result in projects that fit a more compact land use pattern and reduce BMT and greenhouse gas emissions per the ACA.
Yeah, we haven't done that yet because we just released them on Friday. We couldn't do that until we knew what the policy committee was going to finalize them as. So they just did that.
We can try and score.
That's always, but we just haven't gotten to it yet.
we can try and get some scored before your guys' work session and like, at least show you how they compare, how the old scores compared to the new scores, and then see how it goes from there.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, nice to have a couple of, set up an example, that shows, gives some examples, real scenarios.
Yeah, what we'll probably do is grab some projects from the tip that we scored last time
Yeah.
for the 19 and 22. We'll probably just use the final score because it's hard to do the individual criteria because they don't match up anymore. So we can just say, okay, this project scored a 50 last time and it scores a 75 this time. So what do we think about that? So
Do we need to set up our meeting too right now? Should we also schedule that?
we want to do that at the work session, just so we know kind of how things are going by then. Because I don't know how long you guys are going to need to review it.
Yeah, I would go with, for that.
Schedules change.
Yeah, maybe wait until the work session.
Wait until the work session and then, okay.
See how it goes.
So we can take a couple projects from the tip and then as an example, right?
Yeah, we have nomination forms for a lot of those projects, so we'll just take
So
the
you can just take them. See,
previous score and the new score.
what I was thinking, that maybe I'm just out on left field here, but you'd probably have to be a lot more work to take, let's say, a project not like the intersection at Alyeska and run it through the scoring and see what happens. But I don't know that that's in
Well,
your
the
purview
only-
there.
Well, the only challenge with that is we don't have a previous score, because we could score it with the new ones, we just don't know how it rates again.
Yeah, okay, you don't have.
But it's something that's, well, there's a similar score.
Yeah, we have a bunch of projects that we scored for the last.
There's gotta be a problem intersection.
Yeah,
That didn't, yeah, okay.
Yeah, because we can do
Oh, that
like
makes sense. Yeah.
MLK, for example. We can show what the MLK extension looked like in the previous tip score, and then we can score with the new one and see how would it have
Oh,
fallen
yeah.
if it had gotten nominated this go round. So it's an easier way for you guys to compare old versus
Yeah.
new, and if it helps meet some of the issues that Nancy raised.
Yeah. In different scenarios too.
Yeah. We'll try a few different projects. And we'll do not roadway and non-motorized as well, so you can see both of them in action.
So Nancy was is she a committee?
Member of the public
Okay, she is.
today.
Nancy, so you heard that answer to your question?
Yes, I did. I would
Is this
encourage the Community Advisory Board to nominate projects they'd like to see scored if they have projects that they think would be particularly illustrative. And sorry, there's an airplane going by.
No, you're fine. Nancy, are you a Federated Community Council representative?
No, I'm not. I'm an active
Okay.
member of my community council, but I'm not representing anybody but myself right now.
Thank you.
Nancy Pease, that's an athlete.
Yep.
Yep, that's about.
Okay, so do we have anything more on this action item before we keep going?
Just to point out that there is that tip criteria update guidebook. It's the last document there. That's a good, kind of good starting point as you're thinking about what in the world we're doing here.
Should we
Why are we
do
doing
that
it?
before we go to the work session?
Yeah. Good
Before we have
background.
the work session, will this be sent to us by email that we can
We
see?
can do all that. Yeah.
Read my mind.
Because
It's
it's my
on-
first time to see it. I'm just trying to go through what I'm
Yeah,
listening.
it's on our website right now. The
Yeah,
agenda
yeah,
page
it's
is up
on
there.
You
It's
just,
on the website as of
Yeah.
Friday.
Yeah, for the public announcement for the second.
Yeah.
Click and get it.
Yeah, we always
We can-
post our business items a week in advance, but we will make sure you get it.
Thank you.
Okay, so we just covered the tip criteria update, handbook and memo. We're gonna move up over to project and plan updates. So we have Glen Highway PEL design funding. Is this a no-go? Is this something different?
I'm sorry, I don't know what you're.
So we have a project and plan update of Glen Highway preliminary environmental linkage / design funding. Was this something requested on here, or was this an old item that was?
I don't remember who requested it.
You took me to leave it on the, it's on.
It was in the meeting minutes. It said
We
that's
removed-
what was gonna check
Okay,
into this.
I believe that
Artillery
So
road,
this
we
is-
removed.
Okay, so this is a different creature. So
Okay.
what has happened is there was a Eagle River CPD study done probably a decade ago.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a phase 2 that was talked about for quite a while. The municipality got some funding, and I don't remember where they got it through, but it was for the Business Boulevard, you know.
Yeah, there was $6 million
Yeah.
in the remaining portion.
And so this is funding that the muni is using to create some sort of, I think it's a recon study there, but I'm not 100% certain, but it's not AMAT's funds. I know that a draft has gone around for a scope of work, but I think it's still internal chewing on it sort of thing.
Exactly, that's okay, because I heard they wanted to use, they didn't have enough for design, that they were gonna give funding to the state, a matching portion. And the state was going to do, and I heard the PEL had been canceled, but they were gonna come up with a design.
Yeah, I don't believe this is.
We cannot get any clear information on this. This is going all over the place. Yeah, go ahead.
James Jordan, DOT. So you're referring to Artillery Road?
It's time for a fire drill.
To be continued.
I don't think you're gonna hold it.
Motion to pause.
Sorry, everyone online, we'll be back.
And we're back.
Better than that. You always hold the door for it.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were referring to the artillery.
No, it all ties back to the artillery.
Did you get my email?
Yes, I did. That's why I thought it was removed. That's why I was wondering. I thought that item was removed.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering what this.
That was the clarity you're looking for. is
Yeah.
That DOT doesn't have anything going on. There is an Eagle River project here in the Muni. If you want to talk about that, I would talk to Ken. Get him in here and he can give you an update on this.
Because I'm hearing so many crazy things about this project. So there's no project, there is a project.
All you need to do is contact Ken and say, we want you to give us an update on whatever project you guys are running on Artillery Road and get him in this room to give you an update.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Do.
Yeah. This is getting crazy. We're hearing some people on this.
So I kind of figured that's what you guys were gonna do today.
Yeah.
Because that was
You guys are just taking the chance.
a suggestion.
So there's no formal state is acknowledged or beyond the.
Yes, it's still live.
There are no state projects in development for our, for the interchange, any form at this time.
Did we break our quorum?
When they canceled that PEL, they killed everything.
Well, the PEL was never started.
It was never even started.
Right.
Yes. And so what's weird is I realized I've sent like 8 emails back to you and none of them are going through. So
Stuff in the group.
Yep. And so I tried a little experiment. I said, okay, let's remove. So that's what it is. If I respond just to you, it doesn't kick it back. But if I CC everybody in the group, it rejects and it will not.
Sometimes there used to be old spam.
Oh, I get a rejection. Did you get my email back saying I'd be here today?
I did.
See,
So,
I
yeah,
knew it.
So it doesn't work, yeah.
It's none of us. So when we CC, I had a suspicion that nobody's responding as a group. So something's getting kicked back, part of that group. I think it's how many people are involved. I mean, it's a large enough group.
Yeah, because I sent it to everybody. That's what you did.
Yeah, over and
And I got
over.
a message back, one recipient rejected.
Yep. One recipient's rejected, and I finally looked, and it doesn't show in the sent, it shows in the outbox.
Yeah, I think they went to the restaurant. So if that one recipient's rejecting it, I wonder if it's causing problems for everyone else.
I think something's going on, and we cannot have group correspondence with you. If you set it up that way, very clever. No.
I did not. You.
Yeah.
No, I just like group all of you and put you in email.
Yeah,
I'm not allowed to set up a group, I think. The meeting, I have to just individually put you on my.
I was like, let's have this action item. Nothing. I was like, man, this is turning into a pattern.
Everybody's getting your email, I assume. Yeah.
I'm getting Christine's email, but I'm not really getting anybody else's responses back.
No, neither.
I wonder if it's because they changed things recently about external emails.
I could
Because
ask.
the Muni adjusted stuff to identify what is an external email, and that's part of their spam catching.
That's what I think, yeah.
I don't reply to all. I usually just reply to you, so.
Yeah, so I got your.
Should we be replying to all?
Yeah, we replied to all. And
Some comments are good for everybody in my thought process to know.
They probably are, but I'm just saying, yes, I'm gonna be at the end.
Yeah, yep.
So,
yeah, so, yeah.
Like, do you want something on the agenda? Yes, I would like this on the agenda to give everybody an opportunity to, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Are we, do we have everybody or are we waiting on?
well, they didn't have a fire drill because they were not in the building. So.
Yeah, not fair. Okay, so we went through our action items and okay, I guess that's not my code. Give me 2 seconds.
It's on the pad in front of you.
Truth be told, I started entering my own personal code and yeah.
I put my credit card pin in that door before. That's not working.
What was that again?
Show password.
So, project and plan updates. So what I would like to do is we cannot make it an action item, but I would like to invite, who is the municipality's chief design person? Kent?
Kent Colhase?
Yes. Can he be invited to give a plan update for the, I don't know what they're officially calling it. There's a portion of money that's being used for the study, and I don't know what they're designing officially.
I'll find out who it is that is in charge of that, because it could be our boss, but it could be Kent. And we'll figure out who can be here and explain what's happening with that.
And also, I sent an email. I received no response, so I will bring it up now again. James had brought up previously that there was discussion with merge lane improvements at Artillery Road. And if CAC wanted to have comments submitted, it might be an opportune time. So I would like to have that on the agenda for our next, I don't know, we're probably gonna be pretty packed with our next meeting. The next regularly scheduled meeting, not this, yeah,
In October.
yes.
Yeah.
So the Glen Highway PEL design funding, we're gonna get clarification on that. We're not making any, getting any plan updates. How about non-motorized plan?
So that creature was just adopted by the policy committee last week. There were 760 some odd public comments. So it was heavily commented on, got a lot of interest. So it did just get adopted by the policy committee. And so we're just basically now needing to edit in all those comments and get it printed. And I believe it's previous plans have been adopted by the Anchorage Assembly, which puts some teeth in it on the assembly side and the municipal side. So they're planning on doing that as well. But policy committee did approve it.
Thank you.
Is there a website with the comment summary of the end?
They're on our
They're on our website, but I can also email them out.
Yeah, it's on the policy committee agenda page for that July 23rd meeting. Range up.
No, 22nd.
22nd?
Yeah.
Okay.
23rd.
Any other questions, comments on the non-motorized plan? Hearing none. MTP 101.
That's me.
Not me, not me.
Oops. Sorry, I'm sharing my screen when I'm not supposed to. Okay, so as you know, I'm sorry. Okay, there we go. A long while ago, we got together for the 2040 MTP. So this monster of a document. And
Can I first ask who's we?
the committee, this committee, because I was staff at the time. So, and we had comments and stuff like that. But one of the things that we discovered is that people were having a hard time kind of understanding what was the MTP. And so for the 2050, the newest update that we're hoping to start here soon, I decided that I wanted to do kind of an MTP 101 that did very briefly touched on what the MTP is, what are some of our requirements and constraints that we have. So hopefully people can get a better idea for it before we actually get started. So they go in kind of with a basic understanding of it. So we threw together this presentation. Christine helped me make it look pretty and set me straight on providing info to you guys. So you are the test group. So just a heads up. And then, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of these items here, these different steps that kind of talk about it. There's 8 steps that we're going to go through and kind of discuss what it means for the MTP. Christine, would you be able to get rid of, or to kind of clean that up a little? Sorry, see if that, yeah, see if we can get that to disappear.
I don't know if I can do it here because you're the one sharing.
It's not on my screen.
What's, if we're changing it, metropolitan, I mean,
Go ahead and hit dismiss there, that's fine.
and I've been here since 97, and I don't think I've ever heard anyone refer to Anchorage as a metropolitan.
Well, that's what we are. We're a metropolitan planning organization. That's what AMATS is.
Yeah, there used to be,
It's a federal
this
term.
used to be called the Long Range Transportation Plan. And both the state has to do one and every MPO has to do one. And at some point they said, the state, this is the LRTP, the Long Range Transportation Plan, and all MPOs create a Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So that's their federal.
So the terminology has to stay, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah. 'Cause I was just looking at something to me that would mean more to the person on the street.
We like to confuse people apparently with these federal.
Well, you know, we look at look at our own committee, we change the word verbiage, you know, and as far as I mean, you guys maybe use metropolitan all the time. But
That's how it's described in federal regulations.
That's the challenge.
that's what we go by then. Thank you.
So quick couple of things. Each of these steps here, I'm going to stop and ask if you guys have questions. So if you could please save your questions until I get to that point, just to make sure we can facilitate and go through this pretty quick because we're going to run out of time fast here. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is kind of what is the MTP? So the MTP is a 20-year plan that has long-range, short-range project strategies and actions. So this is a plan that helps us address both current and future transportation demands. So a couple things to note here. It does have to have a minimum of 20-year horizon. We can go beyond that if we want to, but once you start getting past 20 years, it gets into a really difficult to justify how you can say, you know, this project is going to be out there, or funding limitations, what it's going to be like in 20 years for funding. So we try to keep it in the 20 years, but just so you know, some people do longer than 20 years. This is a federally required document. So we have a lot of strings that come attached to this that we have to do at a minimum. We have to meet these, and I'll kind of go over those as well. Okay, so how do we get through the MTP? And this is what we'll kind of talk about here is, that is very gross looking. I apologize, it's a little blurry. It's not on my screen, so I don't know what's going on there. Okay, so where we start with is normally we do goals, objectives, performance measures, and targets. And like I said, I'll go through each of these individually so you can understand those better. Then we develop criteria. So similar to how you have the TIP criteria, we're going to have the MTP criteria. Then we do status of the system and deficiency analysis. Then we go into project development and selection along with a fiscal constraint. Then we develop policies and actions. And then we have our required air quality conformity determination. And then we have MPO approval, so our group AMATS's approval. And then we have FHWA and FTA approval of the air quality determination. So we'll go into each of these. Well, so just so you know, this looks simple. This is a 4-year-long process. And it has to be updated every 4 years. So as soon as we finish the MTP, we have to start update again. So just a heads up, the 2040 MTP was approved in August of 2020, and we're already less than a year having to start the update of the next one. And technically, we only have 3 years left to update to 2050, so it's going to be a race to the finish. Okay, vision. This is our first step, and this is dealing with goals, objectives, and performance measures and targets. So here's where we start. We develop our goals, which is, as you can see on the left, what do we want to achieve? So these are broader statements, kind of all encompassing. What do we hope to achieve for this particular area? Then we get objectives, which fall under the goals. And those are a lot more specific, a lot more measurable. So for example, a goal could be performance of the system. So we want to make sure that the system is performing well. Well, that's pretty nebulous. What does that mean? Yeah. That's when you get into the objectives and you're talking about, we want to reduce VMT. That is a specific measurable objective. And then you would get into, okay, how do we translate that into a performance measure and then a target? A target is telling you a performance measure is a metric where we would like to head. And then a performance target is how did we do or how are we doing? It's a way to help measure. It's that kind of circular thing of you start everything, you go through the process, and then as you get back around, you say, assess how we did. That's what performance targets are supposed to help us with. So a couple things here. AMATS is required to incorporate the national goals and planning factors that FHWA has out there. And we'll get into that in a minute. And we are also required to incorporate the performance measures. So FHWA performance measures for the 2040 MTP, there are 40 of them. So each measure will have to have a target. So we will have 40 performance measure targets starting with. AMATS can go above and beyond those FHWA required ones. However, we are held accountable for any measures and targets that we develop and include in the MTP. So if we do not achieve it, we actually have not punishment. We're not a strict punishment like DOT is if they don't meet their targets, where they have funding that can shift from one program to another. So say they don't meet their safety target, then they can have funding shifted from their regular roadway projects into HSIP to say, you need to focus more on safety. We don't really have that, but we do have a certification review every 4 years. And at that certification review, we get in a lot of trouble if we don't meet things that we say we're going to. So when we do performance measures and targets, we are very strict on what we put out there because it's very data driven, it's very data intensive, it's also staff intensive. So I know that we've had a lot of people saying, you're not putting the targets we want to see. That's because a lot of them require a lot of data we don't have available now, or they require more staff time than what we have available. So it's easy to go out there and say, we want more, but just keep heads up that there's a cost associated with every performance measure and target. And with the fact that we have 40 that we have to start with, it really limits what we can do. That's not to say that we are not going to try and address it through the goals and objectives, but it may be harder with performance targets. And I'm assuming DOT's in the pretty similar boat of not wanting to put in a whole bunch of extra performance measures and targets that they know they don't have the data for because they get more readily punished than we do. So we're in this together. Okay, any questions on the goals, objectives? Oh, oops, sorry, I forgot. Here's the nice little graphic that Christine put together. So we talked about the federally required national goals and planning factors. So what we wanted to do is show you that what feeds into this. There are 7 national goals and 10 planning factors. So I apologize for the readability. I think it's this computer and this screen. So there are some overlaps. Safety, existing infrastructure, reliability, mobility, economic, environmental sustainability, those overlap between the two, the goals and the planning factors. But then there are some that are just in the planning factors and some that are in the national goals. So when we put our goals and objectives together, we have to make sure that we're covering every single one of these. It's a lot that we have to do. And although they may not all match up with the local needs, it doesn't matter. At a minimum, we have to make sure that we cover every single one of these. We can go above and beyond them, which we do in our MTP, but it again is very similar to the performance measures. If you're gonna put something in there and not actually work on it, then why do you have it in there? Or if you don't have the staff to do it or the will to do it, why are you doing it? So we have to be pretty careful what we put in there because it sets up expectations for people of, you said you were gonna do this and then you didn't do it. So it's a heads up. As you can see, there's a lot that goes in here, a lot of non-motorized freight. We have a lot of environmental stuff, but not as much as probably what people want us to put in there. So that'll be looked at for the 2050 MTP of where can we go above and beyond this to help meet our local and state goals and objectives. Any questions about goals and objectives?
Is electric vehicles incorporated in this at all?
Not in what you see in front of you, no. But in our 2050 or 2040 MTP, yes, we did incorporate an objective to look at electric vehicles or, moving forward to putting forward policies to help implement electric vehicles. It'll also be looked at for the 2050 MTP.
And we have one comment in the chat. Would you like me to read it?
Yes, if you could.
Okay, from Nancy Pease. Glad to see the MTP proclaims to be continuous and cooperative. Therefore, will you include in your MTP 101 a list of the public comments that AMETS explicitly deferred to the MTP 2050? For example, AMETS promised to include a system of GHG greenhouse gas reductions into the 2050 plan, since AMETS didn't do that in the 2040 MTP. There are probably at least a dozen substantive issues that AMET staff have similarly deferred to 2050. So can you list these deferred issues in your MTP intro so that the public knows they are being listened to?
No, that's not relevant to what we're talking about here. This is about an MTP 101 overview, not specific information. The things that were deferred from the 2040 to the 2050 will be addressed as part of the 2050 MTP. Because what we're supposed to be doing for this MTP 101 is making it a general one that we can give out to anyone at any point in time. If we put in stuff for the 2040 MTP, then it'll date it to that particular one. And so that's not really the goal here.
I have a very hard time understanding this slide right here, and maybe it's because I can't read it,
Yeah, I know.
but just given some feedback, I looked at that and I'm having a hard time.
So what of it is it just readability or understandability?
I think both. So I see that there's overlap. So we both have, so goals and objectives, you have national goals and you have planning factors, right?
Federal planning factors. So this right here, this section here is all the federally required stuff. That's it.
Oh, this is all the
This
federally
is
required.
just the federally required items. This is not everything that we have in our.
Oh, the red. Okay, I see the red coordinates to the different items where the black coordinates to the top.
others.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh,
Sorry.
I didn't get that either. Now.
okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And it didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can see it.
Because they-
Now I see the color coding and I see how you're trying to tie them.
So I don't know if you can see the screen, but the screen does show it a little clearer. This monitor, this system here is horrible and you can hardly read anything. So I do apologize for
Your
that.
larger text that you had in the blue blocks in the previous screens, you
Mhm.
could actually read a lot clearer where you didn't.
Even when I try and zoom in,
I can read what's on them. I just didn't know they were color coded.
I didn't know they were
Yeah,
color coded
okay.
either until I
That would
realized
help to
the
know.
red blocks,
Okay.
yeah.
we'll have to take a look at that and see if we can increase the color, change the color to make it a little easier to see, something like that.
Aaron, a lot of these things are in place and we may not have an impact on. Could there be a stress of the things that we do have an impact on as you're going through the presentation?
Yeah, I mean,
Just food for thought. It's a lot of information and we don't know where, yes, this is something subject, this item, good luck.
and that's what I was trying to do is, these are kind of the minimums that I'm showing you right now. We can always go above and beyond the minimums if we have the ability to do it. So you may not be able to, so this particular thing here, as I'm circling these items here, those we don't really have the ability to say no to. We have to do them. We have to incorporate them in, but we can go above and beyond that. So for example, as you'll notice here, there is a distinct lack of greenhouse gas emissions as part of this. That has been noted many times. It's all I hear all the time is greenhouse gas emissions are lacking. I know. That is something we want to look at as part of the 2050 MTP. So that goes above and beyond what is looked at right here, or electric vehicles as well. It's not listed here. So we want to be, that's the kind of input we want to hear from people is this is missing. Well, okay, cool. Let's take a look at it and see what we can do about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm privileged to, my brother's a senior engineer for ports.
Mhm.
And I know in 2035, they're going to be going to exclusively electric vehicles. And there's probably some more information there that, and I mean, I'm concerned right now is that we don't, if you need to get it. You look at other places and there's Costco, there's plenty of places to get energy. In Alaska, I think there's maybe a couple places.
Yeah, it is.
And it's waiting to 2050, I think is way too long to, I mean, we're supposed to be planning versus reacting.
But just to clarify right now, this is just a general presentation for helping us understand the MTP. This isn't about changing anything. This is more just about informing us, the public, of what MTP is. Okay.
And trying to let people know, and it's very hard to let people know that we have as AMATs, very strict things we have to do as part of this. That doesn't limit us to only be that, but we need to make sure that we're covering it. And so what I'm trying to do is just get that out there is that we have this as a minimum and we want to go above and beyond it. So it's something to think about as we're moving forward that, okay, we have basic things we need to do.
That part you said, Eric, I wish that was included in your original presentation. The part you said after the fact that these are the minimal items that we have to, that's huge, you verbalizing that.
Okay, so we can probably include that when we're going through here and just saying that a lot of what we show here, you know, sorry, it's going all over the place, but it's very slow on this screen and not on my computer. So, you know, probably talk about that. We wanted to talk about, you know, we're required to incorporate the national goals and planning factors that we show below. So we may have to reorganize some of that and say, these are the minimum. We can go above and beyond that, and we do. And I can actually probably give examples as need be that we go above and beyond the minimum or where we want to go above and beyond. Same with performance measures. I didn't really want to put all the performance measures in here because 40 of them is a lot to read through. They are in the MTP if somebody really wants to read through them, but it'll be something we have to discuss for the 2050. So it's trying to get the information out there without it being so much because it already is a lot as you know, as we're going through. So thank you for that feedback. We'll try and work on that. Okay, criteria. Ooh, this is not a whole lot to talk about because it's kind of one of those things that we develop the criteria after. So we have the goals and objectives done. We have the performance measures and targets done. And then the criteria is developed that feeds off of all that information we've developed. It's kind of this flow chart that we have going on. And so you've done all of that before it, and then you get to the criteria to say, how can we start meeting our goals and objectives and performance measures? Well, you develop criteria that you use when you get projects to come in. So similar to the TIP, you have a set of criteria that says, okay, safety. Safety gets X number of scores, you know, is scored X for a project. Because what you're trying to do is make sure that projects that you put into your MTP help align with your goals and objectives, as well as implement your goals and objectives and your performance measures. And that's what the criteria is. It's helping us to address not only AMATS's additional goals and objectives, but the federally required national goals and planning factors and performance measures. So it's probably going to be a similar thing like the TIP where we have criteria put out for the public to see and things like that. We're always kind of making improvements where possible. Yeah, I don't know. Do you guys have any questions on the criteria? To me, it's really self-explanatory what criteria is. So I didn't know if you guys needed more explanation. Should I put in an example here?
Yes.
Yeah, an example would be good.
Okay, maybe add an example that shows kind of what we're talking about. Okay, we can try and.
The one question I would have would be, is there a difference between the MTP criteria and the TIPS criteria, and maybe some clarifications of how that goes?
Yeah. That's what I was thinking too.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely clarify that. So if people have any questions, or I can verbally clarify that. Yes, there is a difference because the MTP is kind of an overarching higher level vision document that you want. Whereas the TIP is a more focused, nuanced, what do we want to do in the next 4 years document. They should be fairly similar, but they're not going to be exactly the same because the TIP one have to be a lot more specific. And the MTP one can be a lot more general in certain things, but they'll probably be pretty similar. Like, is this helping us to implement the 2040 land use? You know, and then the TIP has very specific land use ones. So they'll probably have similarities like that. But they will not be exactly the same.
I can't remember from the past, do the MTP criteria tend to be fairly concrete, measurable, and not subjectively worded?
In the past, they've been pretty subjective. We'll have to look at it for the 2050 to see what we want to do. I would like them to be a lot more objective. The problem is because it's such a high level planning document, we may not know everything specific about a prod. It has to be a lot more broad because we don't have all the design decisions in place at this point for the MTP about what a project will and won't do. So it's something we want to work on, but we have heard that from the public that these are a little too nebulous. So we want to try and get something better. But last MTP had 4 sets of criteria. I'm hoping to maybe have only 2 sets of criteria this go around. So we'll see, because one was kind of an initial one to call out some projects. Then you had one that was for each scenario. Then you had one for the model. Then you had one for the final. And I think people got really confused. So my goal is to try and make it a little less confusing for people. But we'll see. Okay, next. So this is technical stuff. Sorry about that. Status of the system and deficiency analysis. These are actually called out in federal regulations that we have to do. Status of the system is taking a look at the current transportation network and how are we doing? You know, how is our system doing? What is our, I might be kicked out of the meeting. I have no idea.
You're on speaker.
So we'll see if it still continues to work, but it's giving me an error. Just a second, everyone. Okay, looks like it's still working, so we're fine. So it's just taking a look at where we're at right now, because what you want to do is you want to get a baseline. In order to be able to look at the deficiency analysis, the next thing we talk about, you want to have a baseline, and that's what the status of the system is. Deficiency analysis is taking the latest available estimates for population, land use, travel, employment, congestion, economic activity, and saying, what is our network going to look like by the end of our performance period? So at the end of 20 years, what does our system look like if we didn't do anything at all? Because then you can say, okay, are we fine? Do we need to not do anything by the end of the 20-year period? Or do we actually need to make some improvements? Because it identifies spots of concern. Hold on. Let me see if I can rejoin. Sorry, everyone.
While you're rejoining.
There you are, Bob.
So while you're rejoining, so like things like the 2018 earthquake and the impact on the system, how do you accommodate that in the various documents you put forward? I mean, some bridges were damaged, some other things had to happen. So that was not planned for, of course, but do you modify your plan for the next time to include the modifications you made because of a disaster like that?
So that actually is part of our process because, sorry, it looks like the internet is completely cut out on my laptop. So that's super fun. Christine, do you have the ability to pull up sorry, while we get that going, I can actually respond to that and still continue moving on. So that's part of our, part of what we have to do for the national goals and planning factors is look at resiliency of the system. And so that incorporates things like earthquake, or these hot spots that happen, or climate change. Sorry if I offended anyone with those words, but
Climate change?
yes, people get very touchy.
Global warming.
And so it is something we have to look at. It is very hard for us to be able to incorporate all that kind of stuff because it's really impossible to plan for it. So we have to be a lot more reactive to it. But one of the things we like to look at for projects is how is this project helping the system be more resilient? Is it giving us an opportunity to be able to have a secondary route around something? So for example, frontage roads on the Glen Highway. We heard endlessly from people that it was unnecessary because there's no land for us to be able to develop out there. But what frontage roads allow us to do is if there's an incident, say rock fall or something on the Glen Highway, there's no rock falls out there, but say there's an incident, it allows us a secondary route to get around that and be able to shuffle people around. Or trying to come up with other incident responses out there to where we close down a couple of the southbound lanes to get people going that way if they need to get out of the northbound and stuff. There are different options like that. We factor it in, but I can't guarantee that we will always be able to say this project will always address future earthquakes issues that come up.
Okay.
But now that we recognize that there are maybe some areas of concern with some of our bridges or overpasses or things like that, maybe that's if somebody comes along and says, we need to do this project. In our TIP criteria, at least, we actually talk about resiliency. And so as part of the MTP criteria, my assumption is we'll have something in there about resiliency as well. And a project that'd be like, okay, historically, there was a concern here for earthquake. This is going to help us in future earthquakes. So it gets extra points for resiliency and stuff like that. So
Question on, let's say you give a whole ranking system right there. I'm assuming that there's a time period that additional projects could be added or manipulated. And like what I mean is maybe you have the projects all scored, then they do the ICBM study and it ranks a high importance on certain projects right there. And I remember in the last MTP, I thought scoring was changed for certain project or projects were added at later points. Is there a period of time that projects can be worked?
I'll give you two answers. The first answer is yes, there is a specific set of time of when we get nominations, we score projects, and that's our period of adding projects in, period. But the second answer is there is always the policy committee and they have final say until it gets to FH.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought. So the policy can interject.
Yeah, if there's something that was not nominated, it's not part of a plan out there, but a sinkhole happens and we're like, you know, we need to get a project into the plan to help deal with that roadway. And it comes up at the last minute, we can score and rank it, or the policy committee can just put it in. My preference is to score and rank so we can at least keep it consistent with everyone, but whatever. It is what it is. And there is a way to get a project in, but we try and make sure that we are as transparent as possible with everyone, because we don't want people to feel like projects were added in without anyone knowing about it. Because the same could be said, projects are removed without people knowing about it. And we don't really want that. So we're trying to be good about it. I can restart my computer real quick. Okay. So while you're doing that, I did want to go in. So one of the things that we've had issues with, and I wanted to bring this up, is people commenting on our data. The MTP is a difficult thing to deal with because of the 4-year period that we have to update it. So if you get your status of the system and your deficiencies analysis done within the first couple of years, you're pretty much done with your data at that point. So population household. If you're at the very end of your project and you have 2 additional years of population estimation or population information, we're not going to go back to the very beginning and update our population information, because we had our point in time, that's a snapshot in time, that looked at and said, this is what the population was at that point, and that's what we based everything on. So it may be that our data is a little old. That happens because that's just how it happens. And everyone faces that throughout the country. So we're not a unique creature up here. But what people don't realize is a lot of the data is based on when we update our model. So for example, the 2040 MTP, our model was started in 2013. 2013-ish, by the end. So we had to use what was latest available that time, which was 2013 data. And by the time we got to the 2040 MTP, it was 2016, and people were like, why didn't you update it to the 2016 data? Because our model is based on the 2013 data. And our model takes 2 to 3 years to update every time. So, in future MTPs, what we're trying to do is update the model more in line with when we start the MTP. And already it's caused problems for us, so we'll see how it goes for this go around. But probably for this 2050 MTP, we'll probably be using the 2019 data because that was pre-COVID. And if we based everything off of COVID numbers, it would be a completely unrealistic expectation of what the system looks like.
Yeah.
So even 2021 data is going to be rough. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah. That's a very interesting, that's a loaded subject.
Yeah, but I mean, what COVID really gave us, and this is just me speaking, what COVID gave us is the option to look at things like work from home.
That's what I'm wondering.
You know, like that was a viable thing. So how does that translate into our system? How does that help with reducing the MT, as we heard from Nancy? How does that help with mental and physical health? Like all these kind of things that are important, but they're really hard to capture.
But you wouldn't capture any of that if you're going to take the 2019 model.
And so that's why we are going to be we're going to have to be really careful about what we do. Because it's going to be a challenge.
I can just say with state of Alaska policies right now, they're switching over, they're getting rid of phones, going to virtual phones because so many people are opting to work at home, not as a temporary solution, but as a permanent. Our buildings are probably running at 50% capacity or less with permanent, not temporary. People are now going to permanently work at home. So you would assume that other models all over Anchorage are going to be doing it. And what kind of effect? It would just be really, that could be huge on our roadways of how many people are using them.
But the thing that we have to do is, and absolutely part of like a survey or something we would have to do is we would have to. Oh, wow. Okay, good. So we have to make sure that it's nice that state of Alaska has that option, the Muni kind of has that option, but not everyone has that option of continuing to be able to work from home. So we don't want to overemphasize how much there is and completely ignore, areas of concern. So it is a very delicate balancing act that we have to do.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussions over it.
I am excited. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Any other questions about data or the deficiencies analysis? It's really technical, but it's easy. It's maps and graphics and charts that say how we're doing, how do we think we're going to do, where are there areas of concern. So, okay, next one, projects. We already did talk about projects a little. Projects have a couple of locations. The STIP, that's the statewide improvement program. The TIP, that's AMATS's transportation improvement program. Then we have DOT's 10-year plan, which is different from the STIP because STIP is a 4-year funding program. Their 10-year plan is similar to our MTP, just the first 10 years of it. Then you have the CIP, which is the Muni's TIP, basically, capital improvement program. Other plans, like, for example, the Spinard Corridor plan that AMATS just did, or any neighborhood plan. One thing to note, when we say other plans, it's other plans that have been developed or updated since the last MTP update. So we don't go back to every single plan that's ever been done from the very beginning of time to look for projects, because those would have already been captured in their previous MTPs. So we look at new projects or plans that have been updated since the 24th. Good example, Spinard Corridor plan, the AMATS non-motorized plan.
Okay, so this is a question that I get over and over from the community councils.
Yes.
Let's say they have a project that they would like to advance. What is the bare minimum to get that project listed?
Nominate.
It just needs to be nominated.
Or have it in this, so when we say the CIP, we also talk about the, I apologize. We also talk about the community councils all do their various list of projects that they want to see. We also go to those if we take the top 3 or so of the ones that are actually.
You look at those. You look at that. Oh, really?
The problem is that they're not always updated. So
yeah, they're horrible. We've lost faith in the system a long time ago.
So that's why we really emphasize the need for people to nominate projects. Because I'll get on my soapbox. When we as staff just pull projects from other locations and don't have a nomination, there's a lot of assumptions that have to go into it that we as staff may not be able to make. But when a project is nominated by the community, they can put in all these areas of concern that they have. This project will help address these things. And that helps us better score projects.
So either an individual or a group, like SPRSA, we can nominate a project.
Yep.
or an individual? It takes two people or just one person?
Anyone off the street can nominate a project. It doesn't matter. We do not sit there and say, well, this one from the assembly matters more than this one from a member of the public. It doesn't matter to us. As long as it's nominated and it has the information mostly filled out, we'll take a look at it.
There's a way other than the CIP. Okay,
Yes.
that's cool.
Yeah, and I didn't put in here, there was just so many things to list. I could have put not just other plans, but other. And talked about like anyone can nomination, but most of it falls under project nomination.
Yep.
And yeah,
Oh, I don't want to belabor it, but is it an annual cycle for nominations or what is the?
it's every time we do the MTP update, so it's every 4 years roughly.
Thanks.
We'll do a call for nominations and we put it out there, but if something comes in afterwards and the policy committee wants it, we'll take a look at it. Okay, so projects. This is a big one here, fiscal constraint. So basically, we have to be able to show that we can afford the projects that we put into the plan. So this is not a put everything possible under the sun, $20 billion worth of funding. We have to, or project cost, we have to actually take a look at historical data, how much we received from, I'll go down to this little graphic, from these different groups within our area. So we have Public Transportation Department, so transit dollars, State of Alaska DOT and PF, their federal dollars. Railroad is their transit dollars. Other, it can be anything. Has there been a economic recovery package that's come into our area and brought some money in? Have there been, oh crap, there's one missing on there. There's also State of Alaska General Fund dollars. They haven't done that in years, so that's why I couldn't speak about it. Or general obligation bonds, geo bonds, that kind of stuff. Then there's the municipality of Anchorage has their local money, and then AMATS has its federal money. So what we do is we have a nifty, handy spreadsheet that we put all this information in, and it feeds out how much we expect per year of funding, and then based on that, it helps us align our project. So we take a look at short-term has 20 billion. Gross estimation. So we can put 20 billion worth of projects in there for the short term. And then long term has 10 billion. So we can put only 10 billion worth of projects in.
So what about illustrious? Will that be carried over?
I will, that was one of the things. So there are two things to recognize here. Our funding has to be shown in year of expenditure dollars. So it's kind of a pain in the butt, but we have to account for inflation. And we generally use CIP, Consumer Price Index for that. Or CPI, sorry. CPI. So, see, even I have so many acronyms to keep track of. So we tend to look at the Consumer Price Index. It'll be interesting to see how it goes this go around with COVID. So I'm quite excited. But then when we get to the end of our list of projects, I'd say everything's funded. If we have any additional projects that the committees or the public have deemed that is important, that we should carry from MTP to MTP as we don't have funding for it now, but we may have funding for it later. That goes into the illustrative. Because there's two aspects of illustrative, one funding and one project. So we've got to be careful how we talk about it. For projects, when we talk about that is if additional funding becomes available. So that could mean that, okay, another economic recovery package from the feds come in. Gives us another $10 million.
There's two sections of illustrious?
Yeah. Sorry, shouldn't mention it. Ignore my thing, don't worry about it. For projects, you asked specifically for illustrative for projects. That is if additional funding comes in. And that would be like an economic recovery package, brings more money in that we did not anticipate. So we need some more projects that we may be able to pull from. That tends not to happen because those tend to be long-term projects. But it's like, okay, it moved this project forward a little, it freed up a little more space, let's move it in. We would have to do an amendment to the TIP, which takes about 1.5 years. And by that time, we're already in the next update to the TIP, or to the MTP, sorry.
So you're two different lists. You have a postponed indefinitely list, and then you have a fiscally constrained list right there. Does policy break up that list right there? The staff differentiate too, just curious?
What do you mean?
Who deems if this project is a fiscally constrained project, there's more funding available versus we're going to put this project, even if we get more funding, we're not going to do this project, but it's still on the illustrious.
Well, Okay, just to clarify, if we say it's fiscally constrained, that means we anticipate funding within the 20 years of the MTP. If we say it's illustrative, there's no funding in the 20 years of the MTP, but we think it's a project important enough that if additional funding comes forward, we want to maybe pursue that project. That's decided by the policy committee ultimately, but that's part of our process. So scoring and ranking, so projects that score really high tend to be short term unless there's some extenuating circumstances that like, we're not going to get this done. You know, DOT comes in and says, we're not doing this project now. We want it in the long term, or we need to split it between the two because it's so much money. So that's part of kind of the overall process. And, you know, for people who were here last time, we have work sessions on this, hours and hours of fun, where we sit and go through the fiscal constraint and talk about, here's our list of projects and here's our money.
Thank you.
Yeah. I didn't really put illustrative in here just because I personally hate illustrative. It causes so many problems because people don't really understand what it means that I don't like that we have it in there. I wish we did, but it's there. Okay, next is policies. So this is a section of the MTP that is not project specific. Because a lot of the things that we want to implement, whether it be transit supported development corridors or non-motorized improvements somewhere, we may be able to do through policies or actions. So, you know, helping to increase non-motorized percentages in our travel mode could be done through increasing of bike parking or a reduction of car parking, for example. So we just pulled a quick example from the 2040 MTP that showed here, and I'll need to change this a little because it's a static thing for the 2040, but I wanted an example that shows, you know, an action, for example, is investigate congestion management alternatives to roadway expansion projects. So that's our way of saying, you know, we don't want to expand every single roadway we come across. Is there something we can do to help with congestion that isn't an expansion of a roadway? Or a policy is a little overarching direction that is given towards staff. You know, develop an interconnected network of streets where appropriate, blah, 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 the rest of it.
Does this include rail?
Yeah, we have to include rail, but only for their transit side of things. So you know that a portion of the railroad is for moving people from one place to another. To get some money for it, that's kind of what we would incorporate into here. We also do with freight. We can help where freight is needed, but it's rare for railroad because they kind of do their own thing. So we incorporate where we can.
Would you have their policies? This is just
These are just for AMATs.
a policy committee's policies.
So these are any policies or actions that you see in the MTP from the 2040 onward are only for AMATs itself or AMAT staff. So here, I'll stand up so everyone can see me. So if we say develop a policy, that's for AMATs to look at developing a policy. If the Muni, if DOT, or if anyone else want to develop their own policy, they're more than welcome to. We can help them with it. But we don't have the ability to force anyone to do something.
Or you're not being forced either to be upheld to their policy.
Correct.
Okay.
The reason why I say rail is that there was a rail committee that was disbanded about 3 years ago that had a very
Commuter rail?
rail.
Yeah, commuter rail is not really in here.
Okay.
It'll have to be looked at for the 2050 and we'll have to justify whether there's funding for it or not.
Yeah.
So, and with the disbandment of the task force, it's going to be a interesting discussion to have about commuter rail. Okay, any questions about the actions? I really want to just emphasize the action and policies is just kind of another chapter to pay attention to about ways that we can do it that aren't project specific. Because there are some things that are just so hard to nail down as a specific project, or, you know, it really doesn't fit in there, that's where our implementation chapter is. But recognize that projects, actions, policies, they all go towards helping to implement the transportation system or make improvements.
I will make a comment that you know, the national defense, you know, having if Glen Highway is inoperable, a large majority of our workforce is in the valley. And not having an alternate system for them to get to
to J-Bear needs to be something that in the long range should be looked at.
And that exactly speaks to comments that we've heard from the 2050 or 2040, where no one wanted us to make improvements to the Glen Highway. You know, we have to look at all aspects of things. We can't just look at it in a single viewpoint of, we don't want big expansion, or, you know, we have many facets we have to look at as the MPO. Okay, air quality. Okay. So this is a requirement from EPA and FHWA that we are able to show we are not making the air quality for PM10, CO, and PM 2.5 worse in our area during the life of the NTP. So please note that it's only for the criterions we list up there, CO, PM 2.5, and PM10. Oh, which one?
Inhibiting our implantation of the.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, that's a different
You didn't write that, Aaron, did you?
Sorry, that was.
Bill Gates did it again.
Oh, sorry. So
What
what?
wrote it, Christine, didn't he?
Sorry, everyone. I'll correct that. And
Why are we not in NOx? Because that's not a problem in Alaska.
for what?
NOx, nitrous oxides.
It's not an issue for us up here.
That's what I thought too, but I'm surprised it wasn't even included. Okay, thank you.
It's only these three, and it's been that way for generations. So we are a maintenance area with a limited maintenance plan. So basically, there are different categories. You can be a non-attainment area, which means you have serious problems and you haven't solved it. You need to really address it. You have to do a lot more requirements and you need to get it done. Then there is the maintenance areas, or blanking.
The reason I ask is because that whole Volkswagen cheating scandal was about NOx, and we get money because of that, the state of Alaska does. But we're not even part of the NOx thing. That's all
I didn't really want to get into it. I'm just
I'm done.
focused on my area.
I need clarity. Okay, I don't understand that. Let's say you have a certain amount of people that are commuting from the valley. What would be an example of a project that would have a negative air quality gauge? Like, let's say like a really steep hill that you didn't make a flat line and they had to step on the accelerator to go up that steep hill? I mean,
Well, it depends. So the big thing is CO, we don't really have to worry about. With the drastic change of cars over the last 20 years, CO has become a significantly reduced problem for us because we have a lot better engines. So the internal combustion is a lot better, but we still have to be careful because we have cold starts that we have to deal with. So when your engine starts from cold, it produces a lot of CO emissions.
so start stops.
So start.
So that's why we have engine timers. So you plug it in and it starts, it puts like a little engine block heater. That's why we really promote engine block heaters for cars up here. And that's helped us be significantly below the CO concerns.
Roundabouts would get a higher score just from.
Well, not necessarily. CO is not really one we have to worry about. So what we have to focus on here is the PM10.
Yeah.
Yeah, the PM10 is the fine particulate, is the really fine, and that's dust. So for example, Eagle River is a significant problem for us because there's a lot of dust there. And so we have to monitor it because we've had some exceedances out in the Eagle River area.
Well, the other challenge is that this is the bigger one, I think, I would say, is when we put the dust palliative down, that's what is designed to deal with when we put the sand on the roads.
Yeah.
And then we have the freeze thaw and it thaws and the dirt comes up and then it freezes again and then all that dust is sitting there rolling around. The monitoring station is right near Tudor and Lake Otis. And so that's one of the biggest places. So we kind of, as Aaron was saying about the engine block heaters and that sort of stuff, AMATS funds magnesium chloride, which goes down on that stuff and keeps it liquid. It doesn't dry. And so it binds the dust there and it keeps it down. Because I think you can get 3 exceedances in 3 years or something. And if you have more than that, then we go backwards.
This was a non-attainment area at one time.
Yes.
It was a non-attainment in CO and PM10 and 2.5, all of those. And we're in limited maintenance for all those now.
So for example, Fairbanks is having a lot of concerns up because of PM 2.5, the wood smoke. And so it comes from wood fire smoke or wood fire, fireplaces that they have up there. So as the transportation group, they are tasked with solving that issue. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there,
Yeah.
but.
It's challenging.
Would you have a negative impact on your funding? On like federal dollars,
Yeah, so you asked, since we got distracted, you asked what kind of a negative or positive project would we have for this here? For example, PM10, a negative project could be a massive roadway expansion project. Because there's more area for the dust to settle on. There could be more cars in that area, creating more of it or stirring more of that dust up in the air. Or if we were to take away and not fund our magnesium chloride project, that would be a massive negative. Now, we can't actually do that because it's part of our SIP, our statewide implementation plan measures to fund things like that and helping with transit. So we have to do that. Yes, there would be an impact
Here's a
to us.
question on that when you're talking about it. How does maintenance come into effect in all of that? Because certainly getting the roads cleaned up in the springtime is a major factor in how much dust we have in the air.
So part of our fiscal analysis is we actually, and I forgot to mention this, I apologize, is we actually have to look at maintenance and operations of the system. Can we actually maintain-
that was the disconnect.
Can we actually maintain and operate the system? And, you know, it's a touchy subject because what level of maintenance and operations are they talking about?
Got it.
And so in terms of pavement, yeah, we are well above and beyond being able to maintain our transportation system for pavement. For snow clearing, that's another discussion. No one
That's
really
where
wants
that ties in big time is operating and maintenance.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that's where the air quality conformity, it doesn't specifically call it out, but because this is an EPA requirement, we have to show that we're not going to make the air quality worse for PM 10, PM 2.5 and CO within that area. Those are the things we have to look at.
Not a criteria, it's a check the box.
It's an actually lengthy process that we have to go through. Less lengthy than it used to be because you used to actually have to do air quality modeling. It was huge budget and real pain in the butt. We don't have to do that anymore. We're able to use standardized information and we work with the muni and state air quality groups to get that information in. And it has to be done for the MTP and the TIP. So it's a major, major thing for us. If this doesn't happen, nothing moves forward. Because that's one of the key things I should mention at the beginning. A project needs to be in the MTP if it wants to receive federal funding. Now, understand there is a lag time between updates of the MTP, so you may have projects that you want to get federal funding for. And as long as you are, committing that we're going to put it in the next MTP update, it's okay to move forward with federal funding, something like that. It's kind of a weird area that we have to work with and make sure everyone's on board with it. And it does have to be updated every 4 years. So that is key for us. Okay, I know it's time to go, so I apologize. This took way longer than I thought. Just wanted to do a quick review of what the approval process looks like for the MTP. So after you do all the development of the goals, objectives, performance measures, you get your project selected, you get everyone to look at it, you do a quick internal agency and resource agency review. So resource agency would be like Corps engineers, for example. You get everyone there to review it, and then once you're done, you get it released by the policy committee to do a public review and public comment period, as well as an assembly public hearing period, kind of all at the same time. And then once that's all done, we bring it back to the technical advisory committee for review and recommendation, and then we have the policy committee do final MPO approval. Once it's approved by the MPO, it then goes to FHWA. So FHWA and FTA give approval for the air quality conformity determination itself. So they don't actually physically approve the MTP, they approve the determination, and that gives approval for the MTP and physically constraining them. Okay. Thank you for bearing with me. That was almost an hour in length, so I will have to cut that down significantly for.
Well, there's a fire alarm in the middle of that.
Yeah. Do you guys have any overall questions, comments, or concerns?
I can really like to see you present it. If you got a trimmed down, streamlined version right there, presenting at the Federation of Community Councils would be great. You actually have some material right there, and there's a lot of people that ask questions. How do they understand the process, and also how to get projects on the MTP? I think that would be a very good place to do a presentation.
Yeah, it was kind of our plan is to make this something we could shop out, you know, give a presentation to people on and make it as succinct as possible. So since this is the first run, I do apologize for the hiccups as we were going along.
I don't know, to keep it under an hour with that group, if I'm pretty much a mob.
Oh, no, you're gonna literally, however long it takes, double it with the questions.
Yeah, that's okay. That's what I'm here
You
for.
can send it out to us and we can do another pair of eyes to sort of go through and do what.
Okay,
So
Yeah,
so that'd be a good idea.
send it us and we can look through and
Yeah.
check for.
I think you'd have a huge thing, a streamline is, this is a place that you can have impact. This is a place you can have impact, and that limits
Yeah.
this is where you're gonna get a focus of questions instead of questions nitpicking every single little,
It's hard because technically you can have impact on every step.
yeah,
It's just,
the reality of things versus hypothetical, yeah,
as you
I
said.
said it.
But that is one thing, and we forgot this is in our notes, we need to point out areas of where public involvement or where the public is going to be involved in here. And we probably need to highlight that, and that was my bad, sorry, Christine, is putting in there, this is going to be a spot for public comment.
Yeah, totally.
So, and unfortunately, it'll be almost every step, so. But, okay. Any other questions, comments? Thank you all, I appreciate it.
Good job.
Do we have any general information? I don't really see anything in the agenda. How about committee comments? Is there any individual that would like to share something, or are there any items we would like to get on our next? And when I say next, I'm really referencing the October.
Regular.
Yeah. Okay, looks like we've come to that point. I get a motion to adjourn. You don't really need a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Nice to see you all in person.
Yeah, I like.
First time to see.
Me too, yeah.